Hello, and welcome back to my podcast, Raised by Religion, my Exodus to Freedom. This is my third episode. This is called Live to Tell, Part 2. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to those who have listened and supported and reached out. I really appreciate it. My number one goal is to reach those who may be in a similar situation at the moment, or maybe they have left an oppressive religion. So I hope this gives you some hope. And another thing I would like to say is Happy Sunday. I used to hate Sundays, and I used to feel guilty for hating Sundays. Because how dare I hate the Lord's Day? Which it really wasn't about hating the Lord's Day as much as it was hating going to a church service that was negative and hateful and made you feel horrible about yourself. So now I love Sundays. I love the freedom that I have on Sundays. Back when I was still entrenched in the doctrine of the Church of Christ, I would look at someone like me and go, they're so lost. And I would feel sorry for me, and I would condemn myself. But I just wanted to preface this episode with, I love Sundays now. Today I'm going to talk about what has happened to me in the past year. And it's going to be personal. And it's going to be difficult. However, some may look at it as, oh, Karen, you are airing your dirty laundry for everyone to see and to hear. But I believe, and I didn't used to believe this, I believe that people who do the things that have been done to me should be called out. Why? Because when good people say nothing, then those who are abusive and do the things that have been done to me, they will keep doing the same things. And maybe they still will, but at least there will be awareness. And I want to address what I just said about good people. I still struggle with the black and white thinking of not only just the Church of Christ, but probably Christianity in general, or at least my experience with it. People are either good or bad. People are either righteous or they're evil. I still struggle with that line of thinking. However, humanity is gray. Humanity is not good or evil. Humanity is humanity. We're people. We are flawed. We do great things, and we do terrible things. Doing great things doesn't make us a great person, and doing terrible things doesn't necessarily make us an evil person. So I had to just point that out, because that is something that I am still trying to deprogram. So back to my experience over the past year, and also I'm going to give you a little background about how I left the church. Back in about 2015, when I was still in the Church of Christ, I started going to therapy. And I started going to a therapist who was a Christian, but he attended a charismatic non-denominational church. And I have always deep down questioned the Church of Christ, even from the time that I was a child. It didn't make sense to me, but I was scared to question anything, because you were not encourage you know, you didn't ask questions. The only questions you asked are the ones that had answers that they could give. But by 2015, I couldn't fight those questions anymore. So I was going to this therapist, and he showed me another side of Christianity, one that I really resonated with, one that was more about love than it was about works and checking off boxes. And from then on, I started questioning more and more. At this point, my husband was also still in the Church of Christ. Just to give you some context, as I've said before, I was born and raised, so my whole family was still in the Church of Christ. They are still, most of them. My side of the family, his side of the family, they are generations deep in the Church of Christ. So another doctrine, I don't think I've spoken about this one yet, is withdrawing fellowship. And I don't have the verse in front of me, or the verses in front of me, but their doctrine is if someone walks disorderly among the church, that they are to be withdrawn from, meaning you have nothing to do with them, you don't eat with them. So when I was contemplating actually leaving the church, I was very afraid. I was afraid of losing everyone in my family, both sides, even my husband. And I remember one night sitting on the porch with my husband, and that day was particularly difficult. I had been in a very deep depression, very anxious state as well for a while, and I broke down, and I finally told him, you know, what I was thinking about doing, and that I was scared that I would lose him and that I would lose my whole family. But at the same time, at that point, I felt a calling to remove myself. So in typical wonderful husband fashion, he said, no matter what happens, we are in this together. So that really helped me and gave me a boost of confidence that I may lose my family, but I won't lose him. But I was prepared at that point to lose everyone because I could no longer stay. However, over the next couple of years, I still stayed. And I think it was around 2017 that both Martin and I, my husband and I, quit going to the church here in our town, mainly because I was very depressed, very anxious. Just to give you a perspective on where I was mentally at that point, I didn't leave my house sometimes for a couple of months at a time. He would go get the groceries. I was unemployed. He would go get the groceries. Sometimes I would try to go with him, and then we would have to turn around because I had a panic attack. That's how bad my anxiety was. And of course, you know, going to church was not something that I could do at that point. I tried a couple of times. I medicated and tried to go, but then I ended up leaving, which was so embarrassing, you know, having a panic attack and, you know, having to get up and leave. And, you know, if you've been to a Church of Christ, you know how stone silent they are. And, you know, you make a spectacle of yourself, especially in a smaller congregation. Everyone's looking at you when you start crying and you can't start crying and you get up and you have to leave. So I went a couple of times, but it was disastrous. So in February of 2018, we were disfellowshipped. Mind you, no one checked on us. No one knew the situation but my in-laws. My in-laws went there. No one tried to figure out the why. They just, you're not attending, so we are going to withdraw fellowship. They sent us a letter, which was upsetting at the time. Looking back, I'm glad not to be associated with that church, but it was very upsetting at the time. So as I started to get a little better, I started going to Martin and I started going to another church, which, my brother, he's still the preacher there. And then I was still seeing that therapist by that point. And, we went there for a little while, but I'm not going to go into detail as far as what happened at that church. But they did some pretty horrible things, not just to me, but a very dear friend of mine. And I witnessed it. Plus, I was talked about. Martin and I were both talked about when we weren't there. When I was sick, I had, at that point, I'd had anxiety so bad that I thought I had heart issues. And my anxiety came back full force. I was in the hospital, went to the ER a couple of times because I was convinced I was dying. I'd had anxiety and panic attacks before, but never this bad. So we weren't going to church at that point because of the anxiety. And then I got physically ill. I lost 30 pounds within a month and a half. I had no idea what was wrong. I couldn't eat. It was just horrible. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night with my stomach a mess, hurting. I paced the floor for hours in the middle of the night. Nobody knew how sick I was as far as the church there. But then there again, we were judged because, they're just being lazy. They don't want to come and blah, blah, blah. No one there knew how sick I was. So I finally got diagnosed with gastritis and I had esophagitis. And I got on some stomach medicine and I got better, but then we never went back. September of 2020, by this time, I had completely left the church. My husband eventually stopped going as well. And by the way, I apologize for the outside noise. I'm outside on my porch. It's raining and there are vehicles going up the road. So I hope this is not aggravating. But I love to be outside while I do my podcast. But anyway, September of 2020, I was very much involved with a church that my therapist went to. It was that charismatic, non-denominational church. They believed in the gifts of the Spirit, speaking in tongues. Totally opposite of the Church of Christ. I was baptized into that church in September 20. Well, one Sunday, I was at work and I started getting these text messages from my niece who is still in the church. She's still in the church today. Horrible. You're lost. You're going to end up alone. You're not woke, which by the way, I've never claimed to be woke. I've never used that word, but she loves to use that word when referring to me. Just some horrible text messages. And I was not hateful back to her. I did not respond in kind, but I did stand my ground, told her I was free, that this is freedom for me. And, So the next day, which was a Monday, I had an incident with a family member who sent me a message saying that they never wanted to see me or talk to me again. They sent it to me twice. So the next morning, I went and I got off the family phone plan and changed my number. And I cut contact with all of my family. So, fast forward to this year. Okay, well, let me go back to 2021. I had to leave my job as a first assistant manager because I had a mental break. I had gone into a manic phase, and then if you know anything about bipolar disorder, you know that Usually a manic phase leads to a break at some point. Well, I did. So I had to quit work. I went on medical leave, but then I didn't return. I ended up in the mental hospital at the end of August, was in there for a week. Then I started going to a therapist there, which I cannot explain to you how much she has done for me. She saved my life. And I also started seeing a nurse practitioner at the same place for my medicine. The same goes for her. That place saved my life. So, I started doing this podcast, I want to say the end of 2021. It upset some of my family, caused a lot of strife because they were like, how dare you talk about our family, blah, blah, blah. You don't have permission, blah, blah, blah. So I deleted it. In July of last year, I was asked to come back to my old job to get my old position back, which totally floored me. I was doing so much better. I was in intensive therapy called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, because I have a lot of trauma, childhood trauma, as well as religious trauma. And it has been the best thing for me. I have healed from so much. So by July, I didn't go into it full force at first because I was hesitant, didn't quite believe in myself that I could actually go back to work full time, but I did. And I'm still at work full time, still have my job. Around that time that I went back to work, I'm on TikTok. And if you want to follow me on TikTok, my username is Tawanda379, which is TAWANDA 379. And so one of my family members, I didn't know who at the time, but I had a pretty good guess, and turns out I was right. Around the time that I went back to work, I started getting harassed and stalked on TikTok. This person made 3 accounts. They threatened me. They told me I'd end up alone. Does that sound familiar, by the way? They told me, they commented on, just mean stuff. And by the way, I have screenshots, what they say now, receipts. So this went on for months. And finally, the 4th account that was made, I broke down. I had been really strong up to this point. So I contacted a family member and told them what was going on, because I had kept it from all of my family. Everybody, because I didn't want to involve anyone else. And found out who it was. It was that same niece that sent me those hateful messages. The 4th account was actually my sister-in-law, my brother's wife. So yeah, that I never thought that they would take it that far. I never thought that they would take it that far. And it unnerved me so badly that I took measures. That's all I'm going to say. Because you don't know what people are capable of until you stop being who they want you to be. And that's typical narcissism. The Church of Christ, in my experience, is full of narcissists. I've been gaslighted by my family for years. You're the crazy one. There's a line in a song that goes, they called me a sinner when I was a saint. I was doing everything I could to please these people, and nothing was ever good enough. And I don't think anything I'll ever do, even if I were to go back to the church, I don't think anything I would ever do would be good enough. I think they would always judge me. I know people can change, but I'm not banking on that. And I'm not going to wait for that, and I'm not going to allow the abuse to continue. So I got on my old Facebook recently. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I got on my old Facebook. It's an old account that I've had since 2008. I have a new one that I use, but I don't use this one. It was deactivated. And it's full of Church of Christ members. I have my extended family on there. Of course, most of my family, they have blocked me. Whatever, I don't care, because I don't go on their social media. I don't stalk them, whatever. But I went on there and I called them out. I didn't use names, but they knew who I was talking about. So both sides of my family, my mom and my dad's side, they know what they did. And I don't feel sorry for it at all, because if you don't want somebody to call you out, then don't do things to be called out for. And one comment that my niece made when she was, by the way, they were anonymous accounts on TikTok, because cowards. But anyway, one thing that she said was, here you are playing the victim. And I just want to say, if they ever listen to this, if you would quit victimizing me, then I would stop being a victim. I wouldn't have to speak out if you would just stop. And I've said this on my TikToks. I just want to be left alone. I walked away. I didn't bother them for 2 years. I never tried to reach out to them. And they sought me. They came after me. So it's 21 minutes. Over 21 minutes. So I told you I was going to try to keep these between 10 and 20 minutes. So that's been the past year of my life, with dealing with harassment and abuse. And they will go to these links. And I have other stories, but they're not my stories to tell. This is just mine. And I thank you for listening. And if there's anyone out there that is in this church or another oppressive religion and you want out, but you're afraid because you're afraid you'll lose your family, let me tell you, you can build your own family. It's going to be hard as hell. You're going to feel so alone at first, but you are going to, if you seek them, you will find them. You will find your people. You will find people that love you unconditionally, warts and all. They are out there. So I encourage you to reach out to me or reach out to anyone. There are support groups out there. There are support groups on Facebook. I am a part of one. They are private. There are subreddits on Reddit that are awesome and supportive. And so there are resources, and you can always reach out to me as well. So I just want to, again, thank everyone for listening. And I'm sorry I've gone over 20 minutes. But I thank you for listening. And I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday.